I think one of the most difficult sources to cite is a chapter in an edited book, because it's really confusing, because there you have you have an editor in addition to the author. But the way you cite it, and you can notice the principle is similar. You have the author. Remember, in a edited book, you have different chapters by different authors. So the chapter authors' first and last names go first as a footnote. Remember, that's the rule. It goes in the normal order, comma, then title of the chapter, subtitle of chapter that person wrote, in quotation marks. No surprise there. Then there's a comma. Can't quite see it, but it's there. Then you write the word in. It's a comma, so it's lowercase. Title of book, subtitle of book, like what we've seen, comma, editor, period, editor's first and last names. So it kind of makes it complicated because you got all this. And then you write, as usual, place of publication, publisher's name, date of publication in parentheses, and then you give the page numbers that you use. So Angelaris Ramirez is the author. In quotation marks is the chapter title. Then in the name of the book, Muslim Women in War and Crisis, Representation of Reality, comma. Then the editor, I won't try and pronounce that. Or I will. Fega Shirazi, I'm going to say. By the way, if you don't know how to pronounce a name, just pretend like you know what you're doing. And then people will believe you. Publisher, colon, and then the university, comma, year, and the page number. One thing that makes this hard is you have to look at multiple pages. So a friend of mine named Kevin Doak wrote a very interesting article called Culture, Ethnicity, and the State in Early 20th Century Japan. Let's say that I want to cite that. Well, here's the book. There's the name of the book, Japan's Competing Modernities, Issues in Culture and Democracy, 1900-1930. Oh, they're in different style fonts, so we know this is the title, this is the subtitle. There's no comma separating this, the years, but we would add that anyway. There's the editor right there, and it's published by the University of Hawaii Press in Honolulu. So boom, we've got all that information. There's, thankfully, is the year, 1998. And I need the page numbers. It starts on page 181. It goes, and this one starts at 206, so it probably ends at 205. If we had the whole book in front of you, you could check to make sure of that. But we're doing this online, so I have to do it this way. So in this case, right, for the footnote, we would say Kevin Doak, comma, his chapter title, comma, in quotation marks, in Japan's Competing Modernities, Issues in Culture and Democracy, comma, the year. Notice we've got an end dash rather than a hyphen, comma, editor, Sharon A. Minicello, and then there's the information, publication place, publisher, comma, and we'll just say I cited page 134. I had a quote from there or something. Bibliography, you should be used to this by now, but now the last name goes first, then the first name last, period, not a comma. This stays the same, title of chapter, subtitle of chapter in quotation marks, but comma becomes a period. That means in is now capitalized. Title of the book, subtitle of the book in italics, comma, and instead of abbreviating ed, we write it out. Edited by, editor's first and last names, comma, and then the pages of the whole chapter. Place of publication, publisher's name, date of publication. So very similar. So bibliography format, again indented, last name first, Doak Kevin. There's the name of the book chapter, period, capitalized in, Japan's Competing Modernities, Issues in Culture and Democracy, comma, the year, comma, edited, we wrote it out, by Sharon A. Minicello, comma, full page range, and then the publication information. So that's fairly simple to do once we've gone through it. It can be complicated, though, and that's why it's good. That's why I'm putting these videos in different parts. So you can always rewatch it. And you just basically, it's just being meticulous and detail-oriented and just copying out the format. Now, there's a couple other things I need to talk about briefly here, and that's how to use IBID and how to talk about subsequent citations. So let's say that you are citing the same article multiple times. Do you have to include all this information each time that you cite Dr. Doak? Do you have to include all this stuff? The answer is no. So let's say, and you do that with this thing called IBID. and I copied this out of the Chicago Style Manual. It means in the same place, and usually this refers to a single source in the note immediately preceding. It must be never be used if the preceding note contains more than one citation. It takes the place of the names of the authors or editors, the title of the work, and as much as succeeding material as is identical. If the entire reference, including page numbers or other particulars, is identical, the word IBID alone is used. The word IBID, italicized in this paragraph only because the word used as a word, is capitalized at the beginning of a note and followed by a period. To avoid a succession of IBID notes, we'll go on. So let's say that you are quoting this guy, Farmwinkle, in his book Humor of the Midwest. You quote at page 241. The next paragraph, you quote the same author, the same book, but different page. Just write IBID and then the new page range. Then let's say that the next paragraph, you quote the exact same page range, but you want the reader to know that you're still on those same pages. You just write IBID with no information changed. Then here, once again, we're quoting the same source, but we have skipped ahead to another page range. So we add the page range. Now, one thing I want to stress, when you see IBID, it refers to the directly above named article or book or whatever. Here, we switch to someone else. Losh, diaries and correspondence, and then the volume and page information. Now, when it says IBID here, it's not referring to Farmwinkle because that is too high up. It's referring to the immediate first one ahead of it. So IBID here refers to Losh, diaries, and correspondence. Now, there's two things I want to note about this here, and this is to show you how this works. Once you cite the full footnote, you have to do this the first time. You do all this the first time. But then let's say that we don't have anything. Then when we cite it later, we don't get the whole thing. We just would write Kevin Doak, or we would just write Doak, actually. You would just write Doak, Culture, Ethnicity in the State in Early 20th Century Japan, and then give the page number. That's called the simple citation. Once you've cited it, given all the information, you don't have to keep giving all that information. You can use a simplified form. And so that's what they've done here. They've just taken the family name. They've already cited the full information, so they just include the family name, comma, and the title. Just enough information to find it in the bibliography. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to know. After you've done the first citation, you can use this simplified form. Now, you may say, why is there a 1 and a colon in front of this? And the answer is that this is a multi-volume work. When you see a number followed by a colon and then another number, that means volume 1, page 150. So this means pages 35 to 36 of volume 2. This means pages 37 to 40 of volume 2. Right? That's what that means. So what happens if you refer to multiple sources in the same footnote? Right? So what you do is you separate them with a semicolon. So if you're interested in learning more, blah, 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 see Che Yong Che, comma, the ruler of Taewongun. See, I gave the full format, page numbers that are relevant, and then I added a semicolon. Then I give a new one, semicolon, to separate it. And then finally, here's the last one, semicolon separates it. That way you can see why it's all there. I know it can be confusing about using the punctuation, but when you learn to use it correctly, you can read these things to understand immediately what the person is talking about. And that way we don't have to keep explaining things. So Chicago style is not easy. It's very important. It's very useful. And once you learn it, it's not bad. But one thing I want to stress, I wouldn't worry about memorizing this stuff. I have to check my reference book every now and then because sometimes I just forget, and that's okay. That's why you have the reference materials ahead of you. That's why I provide them. And that's why I wanted to make it easier for you to access the videos if you want to review how to reference a particular part. All that being said, now you've learned something about Chicago style. Have fun with it.